Back in that bag again. Whoa, yeah. Hey. Back in that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Splash City Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hartman. It is Sunday, November 2nd, the eve of the college basketball season, and I'm excited to be with you today to talk about some of my favorite early season games, some of the biggest non-conference multi-team events or tournaments, and then also we're going to talk a little bit about the top mid-major teams that I'll be watching throughout the season. Want to give a quick update. Had our first 6th grade basketball tournament of the season. A lot of learning, a lot of development that'll happen between the now and the next tournament in a couple weeks. But we're kicked off. We're underway for my son's team, and I'm sure plenty of you are watching or coaching or helping out with your youth basketball events as well. And it's an exciting time. Just check, the T-Wolves got a win last night. They're back to 500. A couple more games without Anthony Edwards. And, of course, we got Wembanyama, and the Spurs are still undefeated, though as of recording this, they are down 18 at the half to the Suns. OKC stays undefeated. They continue to roll. They look primed and ready to defend their title this season. But as we approach the kickoff to the college season, I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight and get you primed and ready for opening night, the first week of the season, and a month of November. And then we'll start talking maybe a little bit, mixing in some professional NBA action. We'll talk a little bit about high school in a couple weeks as they kick off their season. Thanks again for listening. Follow on Instagram. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate you being here. Let's get into it. All right, so first I want to tip off this college basketball slate with the best early season games. First off, tomorrow night, Monday, November 3rd. Hopefully you hear this before the games start. We got a couple big ones out in Las Vegas. We have the defending national champion Florida Gators versus the Arizona Wildcats. Monster game, tournament implications, kind of setting the tone for the season. I like that college basketball is starting to get into more primetime games, big-time matchups early in the season to kind of kick it off. You're going to see a couple of the best freshmen in the country, at least two of the best west of the Mississippi for sure at Arizona. And Florida returns their big front court. They're reloading their guards. It'll be interesting to see how they come out in this first game. Also in that Las Vegas event is BYU and Villanova. So if maybe you're more of an NBA fan, you get a chance to see AJ Dybantsa in his first meaningful game for BYU, and that should be a great matchup as well. Around the area, we got the Minnesota Gophers hosting Gardner-Webb at 7 o'clock tip-off. NDSU, North Dakota State, is at Oregon State at 8:30 p.m. Central. And the St. Thomas Tommies open against a really fun, this should be a really interesting game. 9 p.m. Monday night, November 3rd, at St. Mary's out in California. St. Mary's perennial tournament team. They've actually won the West Coast Conference the last couple of years outright over Gonzaga. So they are a very strong program. We'll get to see what Johnny Tower and his Tommies look like on opening night. I know some local fans already heading out there to enjoy the California sunshine and watch some Tommies basketball. So that's really exciting. Night 2, so Tuesday night, November 4th, we'll have number 1 Purdue in action, number 9 Kentucky in action, number 10 Texas Tech and Orono native Nolan Groves are playing, and then a big one, actually Texas and Duke open their season on Tuesday. So those will be fun. That's your first look at Cam Boozer at Duke, and then Wayzata native Cam Heide playing for Texas. So some fun, interesting games that opening night, and I'm looking forward to it. Should be a fun night of college basketball. I might even do some Facebook Live or maybe a YouTube Live stream or something tomorrow night. So excited to kick the season off. Now, other things as you look ahead, I always get excited for the preseason tournaments. There used to be like the preseason NIT or a Maui Invitational is in there. It's always kind of a fun. A lot of times they're around Thanksgiving, so you watch a little football, can mix in a little college basketball as well. And so I'll just go through a few of the bigger, more exciting matchups and in the preseason college basketball slate. So first of all, Players Era Festival. This is one you won't want to miss. It's November 24th to 27th. It is absolutely stacked with some of the biggest names in college basketball. I'm so excited for this event. As of today, 10 of the top 25 teams, according to Bart Torvik. It has 5 of the top 10. So if you're looking for the elite college basketball programs, you'll want to check this event out. Again, November 24th to 27th. It's called the Players Era Festival. You have teams like Creighton and Baylor matching up. Kansas is there. St. John's and Iowa State matchup. Auburn, Oregon, Gonzaga, Alabama, Michigan, Maryland. So it's a 2-day event. And then what they do is they pair teams up. There's kind of a championship, third place, consolation type bracket based on your performance in those 2 nights. But super fun event, big time names. I think this is one of those that maybe chips in a little bit to the players and the NIL piece. So hence all the big names are there, and a lot of big programs want to be in that tournament. So that's a fun one. Same week, Thanksgiving week, Maui Invitational, historically kind of the gold standard in preseason non-conference college basketball. This year, I would say the field's a little bit less than stacked, and I think part of that is due to the Players Era. But you still will see some teams, some Power 5 teams, USC, NC State, Texas, Boise State, who's poised to have a good year. We'll talk more about them later. Also around Thanksgiving, you get the Battle for Atlantis. Great November getaway. Like, this is one that I've always wanted to go to. It's in the Bahamas. Obviously, super nice place to go watch some college basketball. It's going to have some of the best mid-major teams that you'll want to keep an eye on. Colorado State, VCU. I love VCU this year. That St. Mary's team I talked about playing the St. Thomas on opening night, they're there. Virginia Tech's coming into the season with high expectations. Vanderbilt. South Florida, another mid-major that has high aspirations. So really fun tournament there down in the Bahamas, the Battle for Atlantis. And a new one that I hadn't heard of, I think it's only maybe 2 years old, but it's called the Rady Children's Invitational. It's in San Diego. Really strong field here. You got Florida, you got Wisconsin, Providence, and TCU. So that should be a fun 2-day event there in San Diego. And then the last one that I'm excited about is the Acrisure Series in Palm Springs. And part of the excitement I feel is like Minnesota's playing in this one, but so is Iowa. Ole Miss, who was a tournament team last year. You got Grand Canyon, who's been really strong in the WAC. They moved to the Mountain West this year, playing Utah, Colorado, and San Francisco. And San Francisco is another mid-major that I got my eye on. So a lot of interesting teams there in some of these preseason tournaments, and I really love that Thanksgiving week. There's a lot of other events. There's some big-time games the third week of November, but if you're looking for something on Thanksgiving, you're planning on going somewhere anyway, and you want to catch some games, Maui, Vegas, Bahamas, San Diego, Palm Springs, all great options for you. All right, now I want to turn my eye to some of the best early season non-conference rivalry games. There's some programs that'll be doing this. Sometimes they go away from it. Different coaches have different feelings about it. But a couple of them are coming back, and I'm really excited for them. Kentucky, not short on rivals. You either love them or hate them. Big Blue Nation, they're all over the country. One of the premier programs, very polarizing. But they have 2 non-conference rivalry games that'll be super exciting. One of them is Kentucky-Louisville, November 11th, so the second week of the season. Not a make-or-break game for anybody except for those families that care about that game. But that should be 2 top 10 teams really pushing each other. And there's a lot of hate there. In-state rivalry type of thing. And that's always a fun game to watch. Pat Kelsey, Mark Pope leading their teams. And what they both hope, I'm sure, are Final Four aspirations. Kentucky also plays Indiana, another rival, on December 13th. So those are 2 that I would definitely keep an eye on. A lot of rivalries are, in-state or maybe they're border rivals. Kansas and Missouri is another fantastic one. Obviously, Kansas has had, the upper hand for many years, but Missouri is starting to build that program back up, and Dennis Gates is doing a good job with them. Kansas has a loaded schedule. They have UNC on their schedule. They have Duke on their schedule. But I'm sure a lot of KU and Missouri fans would say this game is the one they want to watch. It's called the Border War. It's on December 7th. Missouri also is part of another big rivalry game, and that's the Illinois versus Missouri. They call it the Bragging Rights game. It's in St. Louis. It's right before Christmas, so that'll be a fun one as well. And that's kind of the end of Illinois' non-conference schedule. Where leading into that, they'll play UConn, Tennessee, Ohio State, Nebraska, and then Missouri in the Bragging Rights game before Christmas. So that's a really fun one. And then the third rivalry game, if you're interested in this, it's one of maybe a little bit lesser known, but the Skyline Chili Crosstown Shootout, Cincinnati Xavier. Great matchup, solid programs. It's one of those games where I feel like as a Twin Cityan, I'm hoping that Minnesota St. Thomas gets to this point at some time. Because I love that teams within the same city are playing each other at a high level. The Cincinnati Xavier both kind of hoping to get to that tournament this year. So super fun. The fans there, it's pretty intense. I know Richard Pitino and Wes Miller are probably friends off the court, but they will definitely be dialed in, and that one's pretty fun. A couple honorable mention games that I would say are just like other ones to keep an eye on. Marquette, Wisconsin. They play every year. This year it's on December 6th. The Cyhawk game, just like in football, Iowa State play. That's December 11th. And then maybe an under-the-radar one that most people in the Midwest don't really follow, but is usually pretty competitive, is the Rio Grande Rivalry. New Mexico versus New Mexico State, November 15th. So those are just some of my fun, like early season tournaments, and then just non-conference rivalry games to keep an eye on. Next, let's talk about mid-majors. All right, I love mid-majors. I love the non-Power 5 teams. So what I mean by that, Power 5 is the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big East. Those are the Big 5 in college basketball. All the other conferences are what we'd call like a mid-major or low major. Not quite as much revenue in those conferences. The teams and brands aren't as big, but they put out some great basketball. Gonzaga is probably the most well-known mid-major you'll see. I mean, they make the tournament every year. They're making Sweet 16s all the time. They've been to the championship game. So they're hard to call a mid-major in the true sense, but they are based on conference affiliation. So let's go through my top 10 mid-major teams this season, looking ahead. Number 1, Gonzaga. Perennial powerhouse. They're going to be in the tournament most likely whether they win their league or not. And not everyone is that way. But Gonzaga's gotten to the point, Mark Few's gotten that team to the point where they schedule tough in the non-con. They're going to have maybe 2 to 4 quad 1 opportunities in their conference schedule. So they need to make hay outside of conference play. And they usually do just fine with that. So Gonzaga's number 1. Number 2 is another, I would say, mid-major power. It's San Diego State out of the Mountain West. They were the national runner-up in 2023. Brian Dutcher, son of former Gopher coach Jim Dutcher, has that program dialed in. They are always tough. They play great defense. They are the highest-ranked mid-major besides Gonzaga. So Gonzaga 1, San Diego State 2. Number 3, this is a team I think if you get a chance to watch under-the-radar team all season, VCU is always that team that I love watching. They've gone through a few coaches. They had Shaka Smart. They had Odom, who's now at Virginia. Their coaches move up. They do a great job. They hire great coaches. Now they have Phil Martelli Jr., Phil Martelli Sr., former St. Joe's coach, Michigan assistant. He's been around the block. His son now takes over at VCU in the Atlantic 10, and they are going to get after you. And they're always kind of one of those, like they're in that 7-10 game in March Madness. And man, it's tough to pick against VCU. I mentioned St. Mary's. They're opening up against St. Thomas out of the West Coast Conference. So we got Gonzaga, St. Mary's, 1A, 1B in that league. St. Mary's has been getting the better of them in the regular season the last couple years. And Randy Bennett has St. Mary's, like he's been there, I think, 25 years now. They play a slow pace. They take great shots. They take care of the basketball. They will be a factor for sure in March Madness. All right, someone new that has had good teams in the past, but they're feeling a little bit resurgent right now, and that's George Washington out of the A-10. the Atlantic 10. George Washington is kind of a sneaky team coming up this season. Like, haven't talked about them a lot through the years, but they're definitely a team I would keep my eye on. I really like how they're coming into the season. Going to have some high-powered offense, and they're going to make some noise in the Atlantic 10. So West Coast, Mountain West, Atlantic 10, those are kind of the premier mid-major leagues. The other one I would include in that is the Missouri Valley. Drake has kind of been a power in that league for a while. Northern Iowa had a run with current Colorado State coach Ali Faroukmanesh. But this year, the team I think to keep an eye on in the Missouri Valley is Illinois State. They're picked to finish 1 or 2 in the league. Drake won it last year at 31-4, but I really think Illinois State's primed to make that push. They won the CBI last year. I think they're going to make some noise in the Missouri Valley. In the Missouri Valley, if you aren't familiar with that league, I would get to know that one because that is another one where their conference tournament, they call it Arch Madness. It's in St. Louis. It is always one of the best events, and I think it's usually the week before a lot of the power conferences. So there's some great basketball in the Missouri Valley. Number 7 on my top 10 mid-major team, UC Irvine out of the Big West. They were phenomenal last year. UC San Diego went to the tournament. They were number 1 and number 2 in their conference, and San Diego beat them. But Irvine, I think, is ready to make the move this year, and I think they're going to come out of the Big West, so they'll be a fun team to watch. Out of the Ivy League, during the 90s, it was Princeton, the Princeton offense, and they would pull these upsets. UCLA, they knocked off. The last few years, Yale has been that team. Yale has consistently come out of the Ivy League. They've been putting some guys in professional leagues. I really like their team this year. They got some veteran leadership. They've been in the tournament. They've pulled upsets, so this isn't anything new for Yale. You just hope, if you're Yale, that you can get through the league, you can get through your conference tournament, because there will not be an opportunity for an at-large bid out of the Ivy League. The number 9, I have San Francisco, again, out of the West Coast Conference. So you got Gonzaga, you got St. Mary's. San Francisco's that third team. Can they get in the tournament? They're scheduling this year to try to get an at-large bid. They're playing a lot of tougher teams on the road, neutral sites. You got, I know San Francisco plays at the Pentagon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota against Minnesota on November 22nd. They have Memphis, they have Colorado, they have St. Louis and Mississippi State, Loyola Chicago. So San Francisco is primed and ready. If they can win a couple of those games and really ramp up their non-conference schedule, they have an at-large opportunity come March. And then number 10, I got South Florida out of the American Conference. Memphis has kind of run that league the last few years. Penny Hardaway's been getting the high-end recruits. He's getting the big-time players. But I think South Florida's closed the gap on them enough. That's another team that's got, they have George Washington, who I already mentioned, in the non-conference. They got VCU. They have Utah State, Alabama, Oklahoma State. So South Florida's loading up their schedule as well to try to prepare for March Madness, earn an at-large if they don't win their league. But I really like South Florida in the American. And if it's not them, it's going to be Memphis. Some other teams just to keep an eye on. I got Utah State, Boise State out of the Mountain West. Those are always fun, consistently strong teams. Liberty out of Conference USA. Loyola Chicago, St. Louis are 2 more out of the A-10 to keep an eye on. Akron out of the MAC. Northern Iowa, and McNeese State and High Point. Those are just some other names. Just if you come across them, maybe get a watch. But those are some of my mid-major favorites. Those are the teams I'll be watching this year, who I think will probably have strong seasons. And I think if you care about your bracket come March, take a look at them early in the year, get a look, see what you think, and that'll help you fill out your bracket come March. All right, last segment, I want to just talk about a few Minnesota players that are playing around college basketball on teams that I haven't yet mentioned. This is a podcast on basketball representing the state of Minnesota. We're talking everything, all conferences, all teams in the NBA, but we want to have a little bit of a local flavor. I know it's fun to follow guys that play and you watch them in high school and now they're at this college and that college, but we can lose track of them. So I just want to help the listeners out and keep track of some of these players that are out in college basketball making a name for themselves. So in the Missouri Valley, I mentioned a few teams that have Minnesota players already, but Southern Illinois is another one to keep an eye on. Prince Aligbe and his brother Rollins, they played at Minnehaha Academy. So Prince was actually at Boston College, transferred to Seton Hall last year. Now he joins his brother at Southern Illinois. And Southern Illinois is in the Missouri Valley. Great league. You'll see, that's the league with Drake and Illinois State and teams like that. So just might be fun to catch the Aligbe brothers. Last year, Southern Illinois was middle of the road in the Missouri Valley. They finished 8th. They were 14-19 overall. Actually, Scott Nagy, former South Dakota State coach, when they first made the transition to D1, is actually the coach there at Southern Illinois. So another Midwest tie there for the Salukis. Northern Iowa in the Missouri Valley also has Jalen Wilson. I think he's a Benilde St. Margaret's player out of Minneapolis. Northern Iowa has a great tradition in the Missouri Valley. They finished 3rd last year. They usually pluck 1 or 2 kids out of the Twin Cities area, so this year's no different. They got Jalen Wilson. Other ones, Buffalo Bulls out of the MAC. Daniel Freitag, the kid from Breck. He was started at Bloomington Jefferson, transfers to Breck, gets recruited to go to Wisconsin. Didn't really see a lot of time there, so now he's at Buffalo, where Buffalo really struggled last year. Actually, Nate Oates, current Alabama coach, was at Buffalo and built that program up. They struggled last year. They finished 4-14 in the MAC, finished 11th. So, but Freitag was like a big time recruit. So I'm curious to see how he does there, because he hasn't really blown up as much as I think we thought. He was a pretty good athlete, and just haven't really seen much from him in the college level. So we'll see if he breaks out for Buffalo in the MAC. Nasir Whitlock out of De La Salle. He's playing for Lehigh in the Patriot League. Played a lot last year. Lehigh finished 6-12 in the Patriot, finished 8th. But Whitlock was a big time player in the state of Minnesota. He was up for Mr. Basketball, and he'll be getting key minutes for them out in the East Coast in that Patriot League. 2 players at Colorado State, John McConnon out of Eastview and Kyle Jorgensen out of Minneapolis Washburn. Colorado State, I think we've talked a lot about because of Nico Medved being at Minnesota. Colorado State, perennial team now. I think 4 of the last 5 years they've been in the NCAA tournament. They hire Alik Faroukmanesh to take over for Nico Medved. Faroukmanesh been an assistant, so there's some continuity there. Shouldn't be much of a drop-off for Colorado State. They did lose Nate Clifford to the NBA. They lost their point guard. He went transferred down to Carolina, and then Jalen Crocker-Johnson transferred to Minnesota. So the front court with these 2 players from the Twin Cities will have to step in, but I know Colorado State won't lower their expectations this year. They're expecting to compete for the Mountain West and NCAA tournament bid. Omaha in the Summit League, it's the same league as St. Thomas and the Dakota schools. Omaha won the league last year, looking to defend that title. They went to the tournament. They played St. John's. Jashawn Glover from small town Madelia, Minnesota. Big defensive player for them. Key last year, especially on defense. He's back. They're picked to finish 2nd behind St. Thomas in the league this year. Be interesting to see how Omaha does defending their league title. And then the last team is University of Texas Arlington. And Casimir Cash Chavez, who originally committed to Washington. Last year was at Arkansas. Didn't play much in either spot. Now he transfers to Arlington in the WAC. He was a pretty well-known player here in the Twin Cities in the state of Minnesota. So we'll see what he does at Arlington. I know the Gophers have played them in the past in the non-conference. They aren't this year. But they finished 7th in the WAC last year. Hopefully Chavez finds some footing there and can get his college career on track. But because he was a pretty dynamic player at the high school level. So those are some of my Minnesota players, former Minnesotans on college rosters, just to keep an eye on. We've talked about many others. Wisconsin has a lot. Minnesota has a lot. They're kind of sprinkled throughout the country. But just if you come across a game and that I remember that kid, that's the way I am. Like, look, so-and-so's doing this, and just check out how he's doing in that team. So it's just fun to keep an eye on where some of the kids go that we grow up watching in high school level here, and how they're doing at the college level. All right, that's the show. We talked mid-majors. We talked some notable players from the state of Minnesota at the college level. And we also talked a little bit about some of the best games to watch early in the year, the early tournaments, the Thanksgiving weeks, the opening night. So make sure you catch out that Florida or Arizona game, and then BYU Villanova on opening night, Monday, November 3rd. It's probably now today when you're listening, but yeah. Anyway, check out those mid majors. I love watching mid majors. I love the tournament because of that, like the upsets. That's why we watch, right? Everyone can remember those big time upsets we had. And, the more we move to these Power 5 conferences, it just worries me a little that they're going to squeeze out the mid-majors. I hope that's not the case, because I think it's part of what makes college basketball unique and exciting. Different styles of play, different ways to win, different strategies, and it's just it's really exciting. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back this week to talk more NBA, probably a little college now that their games actually start, but the tip-offs are happening. Happen for the youth level. It's happening for college. It's happened for the NBA. And pretty soon we'll be talking high school hoops. So it's a great time of year. And yeah, thanks for listening. This has been the Splash City Basketball Podcast.